So Truenique is part of the consortium that is running the NeuroClima project, and Truenique is a company that was founded a long time ago, 2012 if I remember right. It's based in Cyprus, and it has significant knowledge on issues related to sustainable development, climate change, and environmental management. Through time, it has worked on issues related to adapting sustainability, for example, to policies of the European Union, including the maritime environment, of course, climate change, and also how the issues of sustainability and the considerations of sustainability can be taken into account when one is planning a new project or planning a new policy, or even advising the private sector on how the transition can be done from current usual business as usual scenario to moving to a transition where the real principles of sustainability, both environmental and social and governance terms, can be taken into account. It's a company that has, as I said, been running for more than 10 years now, and overall it has collaborations, and I say collaborations, not permanent stuff, because we try to keep it light as a structure, but it has a collaboration with more than, I would say, 40 experts in different parts of the world that are focusing on issues related to any of the aspects that I mentioned before. So, to me, NeuroClima is a very innovative project in its conception. And the reason we liked this project very much when we first started discussing with the consortium for this project is that it was talking about two things that we consider very important. One was that in order to address climate change and the adaptation that is needed for climate change, we need to define the social tipping points. Social tipping points means that we need to see what is the point where society can take the next step, can make the leap, if you like, to really incorporate in the way that it operates everything that is necessary to change in order to address and to adapt to climate change. And the second one is the leverage points. So the leverage points are the ones that can be like the, if you like, the catalysts or the things that can drive society to make this change. Now, if you allow me to open a small parenthesis, I would like to say here that addressing climate change is probably one of the biggest challenges humanity has ever faced. Not only because it is very important in the sense of what the effects of climate change are on the planet and subsequently to human population, to human society, but because to address climate change, we need to rethink a lot of things about our economic model, our social model, the way we operate. Now, any of these changes is not a simple thing. It's much easier said than done, and this is why we have been going through conferences of the contracting parties for the last 30 years. If it was easy, it would have been done within 5 years, not 30 and still going. But this is exactly why we need to be able to define how we need to make those changes. And this is where I'm referring to the social tipping points and to the leverage points that need to be identified, addressed, and used to help society, including policymakers, business people, citizens, and everyone, do the change that is needed. So NeuroClima is one of the partners that got together to implement this very, very interesting project. And as I was saying before, we consider NeuroClima a very innovative project in the sense that it wants to apply innovation and knowledge to how we can address climate change. The role of Truenique in NeuroClima is the leader of the very important work package 2, which is to identify the requirements and the vision for rethinking the climate imperative. So in that sense, we need to work with our partners and work and use knowledge and information, but also modern tools to do what I said before, to define which are those social tipping points, to define which are the leverage points, but also to define the theoretical basis for the climate change adaptation. What do we mean by the theoretical basis? Means that if we really want to make climate change adaptation and all the changes that come with it, we need to know where we have to base on science, but also on social science, the things that need to be done. And this has to be identified. So not only we have to map the climate-related policies, but we also have to see in coordination and by working with stakeholders how we can translate those policies into effective action. And this is the most difficult thing, because policies, I can give you like 100 policies that are sitting on a desk someplace, but to turn those into action is very important. And this is where NeuroClima comes in, and we are hoping that our participation through Work Package 2 for this requirements elicitation will be very important. Thank you very much. Well, as I said before, Truenique has a long history, more than 10 years of working on issues related to climate change and to environmental policies, or sustainability policies, if you like, to be more accurate. In that sense, we have a lot of knowledge on how we can try to combine the science and technology, if you like, side with the social part, because this is the successful mix of what you need to do in when you're defining a policy. As I said before, addressing climate change is a thing that touches on different aspects. So you have the aspects of how you need to redress the economy, to change the economy, and everybody is very much knowledgeable these days about the need for the green transition, the European vision for a Green Deal, how we need to rethink our economy so we can go to what we call the net zero process, which means that we can continue producing, having a functional economy, but without producing more CO2 and other carbon and greenhouse gas emissions being accumulated in the atmosphere. So this takes a very important change in the way that the economy works. At the same time, we need to engage very importantly, not only policymakers, because it goes without saying that policymakers must make a very strong effort to turn those requirements into policies that will be effective but also acceptable by society. And the third thing is that we need to make society itself, the citizens, the people that can make a difference, and everyone can make a difference, being part of this already from the time of developing. Now, in this sense, as Truenique has developed many policy research documents, has done a lot of analysis, a lot of engagement processes by bringing different parts of industries, of citizens and so on into a discussion to analyze the thing and turn it into a policy. This is by and large what we're bringing to the mix, let's say, of the consortium of this project. So by being in a position to A, understand the policies, B, know how we can use the different tools, and C, do the engagement process necessary with the actors that will make a difference, we can quite substantially support what NeuroClima is trying to do. Now, one could say that the success of NeuroClima, very generally speaking, is really providing some support and making a difference in addressing climate change. But this is too generic, so we maybe have to break it down to smaller bits. And I think that what we will consider a success for NeuroClima is that we will have achieved, to make a dent, if you like, or to move the needle, as they say, if we manage to set a point for discussion, first of all, between the stakeholders and policymakers and so on, so that we do manage to define specifically those social tipping points and leverage points for that society has to take up to address climate change. But not only this. The other thing that we have to do is to make sure that the tools that come out of NeuroClima are really accepted and used by stakeholders. So the tools that we will make, that we will be producing through NeuroClima for designing the appropriate policies, it's not a thing that we want to produce and then leave it laying on a desk, or on a shelf someplace. But these are tools that we want the policymakers and the people and the institutions that will be putting in place the implementation of climate change policies to use them. The other thing is that NeuroClima is also very important in developing training tools and engagement tools. And we think that the more that we will see those tools being used by stakeholders for training, for creating awareness, for engaging citizens, that will be a measure of success. So I think that our work as a consortium is to produce the tools, but our success will be measured on how much those tools will be used by those that can really use them to make a change, to make a dent in addressing climate change in Europe and the world. NeuroClima's future is very much connected to how much success it will have in providing the tools that are needed for society, for policymakers, for institutions, for citizens to address climate change. And we believe that NeuroClima will have a future through its results, through its products, if you like, through its deliverables. So if the deliverables we manage to design and produce go out there and are taken up by those that can use them to make a difference, then I think that NeuroClima has a future. What is important is to make sure that things are not static, because the whole discussion about climate change is not static. The way that we need to make changes in the economy, the way that we need to reinvent in many ways how we as a human society are going through things in relation to climate change is a dynamic thing. And we expect that the tools that will be developed by NeuroClima will also be a dynamic thing. So they will be developing over time. So I think that the relation of how NeuroClima produces its results, and then how these travel through time, if you like, in hand with society and with policymakers, is the most important challenge. We want to have something that from day one is useful to policymakers, is useful to citizens, is useful to institutions, but then it continues evolving with the needs of society and with the needs and the knowledge that comes out of science. Let me say here that, as maybe we have not explained, this is a project that is not only aiming to gather all the information and knowledge and policies and whatnot to create, different tools, but this is something that is based on very modern tools. So we are trying to use artificial intelligence, to use machine learning systems, so that those tools will be very dynamic. And the answer to your questions lies within that as well, that, if you do utilize machine learning in order to always evolve the tools that you're doing so they become more useful for humans, for the society, for policymakers, then the challenge is there, that you actually do develop something that will be evolving as those things that I mentioned before are happening, and the users see the benefit of that. So, long story short, I think that the future and the success of everything we do is how it can be taken up by users, but also stay in tune with the needs of the future.